Today I'm joined by Thomas Brown. Welcome to the show, Thomas.
Thank you for having me, Aaron. Grateful to be here and speaking with you and your audience. Appreciate it.
It is absolutely my pleasure. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself so they can kind of get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, I am a I I am a health I'm a mental health and suicide awareness advocate and a uh, a self awareness and awareness instigator. I a promoter and instigator of awareness and self awareness. I wrote a book. I lost my brother. First of all, I lost my brother to suicide in 2001. In 2012, along with a friend that had also lost their brother to suicide, he and I rode our bikes cross country for a combined total of 7,000 miles. We had a support vehicle. So, like, we would rotate riding and driving. We had the support vehicle because it was important that we made it to our the scheduled events to speak with the community about suicide, about mental health, share our stories, and most importantly, like, listen to other people's stories. And just this year, in May 29th, I released my book about that adventure. It's called 2012, A Bicycle Odyssey, a 7,000-mile bicycle journey for suicide awareness and the healing power of art.
Wow, it's quite a lot of that. Um, Thomas, are you comfortable with talking about your brother?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm totally comfortable with it. Ask
Okay.
away. What would you like to know?
I mean, I've just so obviously this was back in 2001, so we're talking some 23 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and in that time, this is just my observation. I don't think we've come that far with kind of mental health support for men, especially young men, especially looking at the
N-
statistics.
Well, I mean, you're totally right. Women attempt more, men are more successful. As George Carlin, the late great George Carlin would say, men are just better at it. um, I think it's also has to do with methodology in what men how men uh, the mechanism in which they use to take their own lives. It's more prevalent for men to use firearms than it is for women. So I think that's why there is more, men are more successful at it. There was kind of like a shift a little bit in like around 2010, 2000 to 2015, where there was like kind of a movement to allow men a space to be much more emotional. Um, the Andrew Tates of the world have kind of put a setback on that of like, oh, a man is like this and a man is that. And it's like, dude, don't box any individual into like what they're supposed to be. Um, there's a wide variety on the spectrum of emotion. Men act like they're not emotional, but I challenge you to go to any pub when there's a football game and tell me how emotional a man is, whether their club uh, is victorious or defeated, and either way there's going to be a lot of emotion expressed. So why is it okay for men to express either happiness, joy, or despair when it comes to a sporting event, but we're not allowed to express our emotions in any other saying in any other setting? And a lot of that, I would say, is beholden to the patriarchal coding of the language matrix that we were conditioned into. So really, it's upon the individual man or individual person to break that code around them by being expressive, by sharing their feelings. And I think one of the best ways for us to do that, to get comfortable with that, is using some type of artistic um, outlet. I think all of us have an artist inside, whether or not that artist is supposed to be prolific and and become a pop culture icon is one thing, but allowing yourself to explore and train that artistic muscle that we all have, I think is beneficial for us having some type of outlet to express our emotions. I'm a very expressive and emotional person. Um, for a long time, rage was like my um, was an outlet that I had. I could be a very pessimistic, angry, rageful, filled young man. And the therapist that I had was like, I'm not going to try to get rid of your anger. I'm not going to try to get rid of your rage. That is energy that is unfocused. So I want to use it as your fuel, and we're going to use tools and build a mechanism that allow you to focus it. And so I would say that rage and anger that I've had towards the world and my any type of like situation that I might have found myself in, or like with losing my brother to suicide, that rage was fuel uh, for to have the audacity to say, "Hey, I'm gonna spend 7 months on the road and ride my bike across the country and invite people to tell me about their pain."
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I've had a look at some studies and stuff as well before the show, um, and actually it's been found that art or a creative outlet, if you will, can reduce anxiety by 75%. So it's, there's actually science to back it up that actually having that creative outlet, and that could come in a lot of different ways, right? People think of art, they just think of drawing or sculptures half the time, but it's creativity, right? It's being able to express yourself and explore yourself. Like this podcast to me is a form of art, it's a form of creativity. I'm,
Totally.
I'm, I'm out there and, I'm expressing myself. I'm having conversations with people like yourself, where we're digging into some real issues and some emotional topics. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of ways that we can find art to help us with that. Um,
I mean, conversation is its own art form, and the more you do it, the more you learn how to communicate with other people. And part of communication is also active listening. So I mean, as much as you're able to express yourself and get things out, you're also building a form of awareness that can give you the opportunity to cultivate empathy and compassion, because you've learned how to listen. You've trained yourself how to listen, which is its own art form in itself. And I mean, to me, I think like the biggest thing about art is that art is not only a tool for expression, but what is the means of that expression? What are we trying to get out of? And I would say that it's self-awareness. It's awareness in general. And to me, if like, cool, you have a spiritual practice, you have a religion, you have a faith, hey, I respect that. I think it's wonderful for people to have that. But to me, awareness is the only game in town. All right. If you're not trying to like expand your threshold of awareness by not only understanding yourself but understanding the world, you're gonna have if you don't go on that journey of self-discovery to figure out who you are, then you're gonna have an entire world filled of institutions, filled with trendsetters, filled with influencers that are going to tell you who you should be, how you should dress, how you should act, and what you should strive for. And if you start doing these things based on what others are telling you, um, whether you are conscious or unconscious of your true nature, um, and you are acting out in ways that go against your nature, you're gonna that's a mixture for for explosive negative behavior. I think that is it goes against it cultivates negative mental health.
yeah, something that I touch on the show a lot, that we live our lives trying to fit inside these boxes to please everybody else or to do what everybody else is doing because we think that's what we should be doing. And, I spent a lot of my life doing that. And I've spent a lot of my life being unhappy and miserable because of it. Um, and it's took me a long time to get to the point where I'm willing to explore actually who I am, put myself out there, and just be me, and just don't care what anybody else thinks, you know. And
Yeah.
it's it's honestly, it's so freeing. It's changed my entire outlook on life and the way that I am with myself, because I used to be very hard on myself. I still am hard on myself. You know, it's not something I can just fix overnight. It's not something that just disappears, but it's improved and it's continually improving. Um, it's just one of those things that when you feel it, you realize how silly you've been and how much you're better your life can be by just being true to yourself. And you know, and that's different for everybody. It's not. I'm not saying everybody has to do what I'm doing, because then you're not doing what's right for you. But for me, it was this. It was doing a podcast. It was talking to people, putting myself out there, being open and vulnerable, and willing to share my life, my stories, what's going on with me. You know, for other people, it might be drawing, it might be a sport, it might be just conversation. You have to find what's right for you, but don't just do what other people are doing. And all these exterior, you know, goals and stuff that we have, materialistic wants and needs, they don't actually make us happy. You know,
Mm,
it's the, you know, you can be happy with stuff these goals, but it's generally the pursuit of these goals that makes you happy. It's the process, it's the experience, it's living that makes you
yeah.
enjoy it. Because once you've got it, you look at all these, you know, look at Robin Williams, for instance, and you know, these famous people, they still deeply unhappy, a lot of them, you know, and they've got it from the outside, materialistically at least, they've got it all. But that's not what happiness is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Happiness is about, I think, to me, for me, happiness is about being in alignment with my true nature. Um, and like that doesn't have to look like anything. You don't have to like use. It's one of the things, part of like the wellness community, and even some spiritual communities here, that like, oh well, if I'm going to be in this community, I have to wear this kind of clothes. I have to use this kind of language, and I'm like, no, you don't. I mean, if you want to study that stuff and learn that stuff and apply that stuff to your life, that's totally cool. But you don't have to like my favorite, the quote that like totally personifies that type of behavior, actually comes in from Fight Club with Tyler Durden, where he's like, sticking feathers up your butt does not make you a chicken. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
have to, it's when you find these things. Like, I'm a Star Wars nerd. Say what you want about the sequels, whatever. I'm a Marvel fan. I've been reading comics since I was like in first grade. Like, that doesn't define who I am. You know, I love Alan Watts, and there's some things that I take from his writings. That doesn't define who I am. I love the band Tool. That doesn't define who I am. There's these little things that like I discover, that I find and I integrate, and but I don't have to like placate to a certain um you know communal code. Like, I'm just me, because that's all I can be, and who I am is constantly changing, and that's why it's important for me to be aware and to have a practice of awareness and to have a meditative practice that helps me like understand who I am and how I change, and constantly checking in to see like, okay, am I following somebody else's party line, or am I sticking to my guns and what I'm about? And it's very easy for people to get caught up into types of movements and um, because somebody told them that that they understand what they're going through and they're gonna make life better for them if you just like follow my way. And it's like, nah, no. like like
yeah.
I To understand who you are, to me, like, I'm also a big proponent of psychedelics, but um I don't think that like we need to be, I think psychedelics should be open for like spiritual practices and for navigating our mental health, but I don't think that it is the, you take it and you're healed. I think it shows you a perspective of reality, sometimes terrifying, sometimes like, the the truest expression of freedom. But it's just there to show you something that you already have access to. That if you work with yourself, you can get there. Um, but like I forgot where I was going with that. Just the idea of what tr- to me, like, the ultimate form of a psychedelic experience is something that we cultivate just through a practice of self awareness. And when I say like self awareness and who you are and what you're about, like, who am I outside of state? Who am I outside of the religion I was raised in? Who am I outside of my bloodline, name and lineage? Who am I outside of my sexual orientation? Who am I outside of my gender? Who am I outside of my race? Who am I outside on a fundamental level? Who am I outside of the meat suit that I, won the lottery to fall into in this existence? Uh, like, what is my true nature outside of all of those influences? And that is going to force you to constantly check yourself, to look for to learn how to look in your blind spots. And you're going to fail just as much as you succeed. There is no mountaintop in a journey of self-awareness. When it's over, when the ego connected to the consciousness, that's connected to the mind, that's connected to the body, dies. That's when the journey of Thomas Brown, the journey of self discovery of Thomas Brown, is over. What happens after that with the energy that occupies this meat sack, that's still up for debate. But you're never going to get to the end if you go on this journey until the end comes to you. So there is no summit. You think you get to a summit, and then you get to the top of that and you're like, for Odin's sake, there's another summit I gotta climb. And I think that's
Yeah,
good. Keeps us alive.
yeah, of course it does, and I think we need that constantly. We need that. Um, it's interesting though, because consciousness, right? It's
Hmm.
it's all just shit we make up in our heads, right? That's all it is. That's what it
Yeah.
is. So like our natural state, if we were just to be and not to, overthink things in our mind all the time, because whatever we think in our mind essentially has been influenced by something, by
Hmm.
by nurture, how we've been brought up. Like I've been told my name's Aaron, so I call myself Aaron. That's how I identify now, as that's who I am. But I could change that tomorrow if I wanted to. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I get the legal purpose and premise for having a name is useful to people, identify people, etc. But it doesn't actually mean anything, you know. None of it does really. And when we get so hung up on it, oh, I'm this person, and people are afraid to change. Whereas, like, you
Hmm.
can change anything. You can change absolutely anything. This is just a view that you have of yourself that's been kind of nurtured by others around you and by your environment. And, change your environment, change the way you think about things. You can be who you want to be.
How you treat a stranger or somebody who cannot provide any goodwill for you says more about who you are than your name. You know, that's why I think it's like important, um, in the game of self awareness and just awareness in general, is like, I want to be a better person for my circle of influence, um, even if the circle of influence is the person that I see once a week at the grocery store, that like bags my food. Um, I don't want to come across their path and create more negativity in their life. Now, it's good to have boundaries, and if somebody's rude, uh, you don't have to get in a fight with them. But if it's somebody that you have to interact with on a daily basis, it's good to like stand your ground and be like, "Nah, you don't treat me like that. I'm not going to treat you like that. You don't treat me like that." Um, but I think that it's important for us to be aware of how we behave in the world. Um, anybody can go sit on a mountaintop and meditate themselves into a coma. you know how good is that meditation working for you when somebody cuts you off in rush hour traffic on your way to work? And that's where literally the rubber meets the road, in the game of like, meditation, self-awareness, and awareness is like, like how you are as a person, like who is, when you're cultivating self-awareness, there's like the two levels that I've found is like one, body awareness, because your body's going to tell you, your brain is going to trick you, and your brain is trying to protect you at all times. So it might not send you all the signals about like a situation that you're in, but your body's never going to lie. Your body's going like the alarms are going to be going off all the time. So like the first like stage of awareness for me was like learning my body, learning how my body communicates to me. And the second phase is like understanding my character. What type of person am I? Am I a decent person? Do I have any empathy for people that are not of my ilk? Do I have any compassion for people? Um, and I think what this world is lacking right now, besides a profound amount of self awareness, is a decency.
I think I lost you there for a minute.
Did you lose me? It got a little
Yeah,
quiet.
I lost you after
I
profound.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Like what I was saying, but besides what we're missing is being a profound sense of self awareness, we're also missing decency. We aren't decent to strangers. We aren't decent to each other. Um, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I think we're in a world where everybody's super selfish, right? And everybody just wants for themselves, and they just have to, like, how do I climb the ladder? And whoever I have to
Hmm.
trample over to get there, who cares? And that's not everybody. Don't get me wrong. That's not everybody. It'd be
Totally.
rude to say it's everybody, but it seems to be the majority, unfortunately. And everybody's, the whole world seems so polarized at the minute. You're
Yeah,
either on one side of the fence or the other. Like, what about all this gray area in between, where probably the truth is somewhere in that gray area? Let's meet in the middle. I
yeah.
just it blows my mind.
Well, that's also a thing about self awareness is that like there's no, it's not something that's encouraged to us as a society. you know like it's not something like, usually I found, I can't we both come from first world countries, but I can only speak for my country because it's the only place I've lived. But like like some people are born with a great sense of self-awareness, not many, but it's like any other talent you could be born with. You could pick up a guitar without ever reading music and just learn how to play it. You could write poems like nobody's business and just be born with that gift. So there's some people out there that are born with self-awareness, but for others, the rest of us, it's something you can learn, you can cultivate. But our societies don't really encourage it. There's like two paths that I've found that like people find where people find themselves on a journey of self-discovery. Either they've suffered some kind of traumatic experience, you know, um, and they find themselves like at a seminar or in therapy or whatever, and they go on that journey of self discovery, or they're in school and they need a humanities credit for whatever degree that they're they're going for. So they take a semester of philosophy or mythology, and there's like a little crack that's put into their mind. They've blown their mind a little bit. And so outside of that, there's nothing that's part of like, there's no institution in the formation of us from youth into adults with responsibility that teaches us how to understand ourselves.
Yeah, and that you see it all the time. That trauma trigger that
Mhm.
sets people on a journey. It just seems to be so profound. Everybody I speak to that's kind of on that journey,
Hmm.
and don't get me wrong, they've a lot of them been through some awful stuff, but a lot of them equally are now better for it because
Oh,
it has
totally.
triggered them to get on that journey. And when you're on that journey, you realize that journey never ends, so you constantly stay. So your life trajectory is just so much better because
Yeah.
you're finding who you truly are and you're bringing that to the world, and that can only be a good thing.
Well, I think like another thing that our society lacks is a legitimate initiation trial. Um, And that's like if we had something built into our society that taught young people, at a very young age, like how to understand themselves, how to manage their emotions, how to understand like what good character is, how they treat other people, different meditation techniques, that all of that would be a setup for some type of initiation, a trial, a test that you would have to go through. And what and like in different cultures in our history, there have been trials and initiations, like, okay, it's now time to leave the the consciousness, the individual that you were without responsibility, and become the person that knows how to take on responsibility. Now, in some of these ancient older cultures, if you failed the trial, it was, ostracized from the community, downgrade in your status in the community, or even death. So I'm not saying we need something that drastic, but we don't have an initiation. So when you suffer a trauma, that becomes your initiation, but you're learning the tools to deal with that trauma, with that grief, while you're in it. And if we only had something that helps set us up to, when these traumas happen, we already have the tools. But 9 out of 10 times right now, in the way that our society is built up and structured, we don't even go on the journey to get those tools until we've suffered a traumatic experience. So it's totally putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, it is, and even when I was a child, before kind of social media, because social media only really came in, didn't it, 2005.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
before that, it wasn't just my parents that raised me. It was the whole community. Everybody on the street. I knew everybody on my street. They used to look out for me, and look out for all the kids, and I'd play with the other kids, and we'd go to the park, and there was no mobile phones. You couldn't get hold of people, so the whole community raised the kids, and I think that
Yeah.
really helps. And I think that's something that's missing now. Everybody's so
It
isolated now with social media.
Yeah, and I would say like technology, I don't like to harp on technology much, cuz like I think technology is like money and power. It reveals the character you have. And
Oh yeah, and it's
it
it's a
doesn't.
brilliant thing as well.
Yeah.
There's so many brilliant things to it. I'm just saying the effect that it's had, um, and not deliberately, but the side effect, I suppose, is that people have
Well, I mean,
become
it
more
it is
recluse.
it there's also, there's a whole debate happening about like, algorithms being manipulated, and it altering people's perception of reality. you know so there's that entire discussion being, that's happening right now too. um but yeah, I don't have the answer. I'm not bold enough to tell you that this is the thing that we need to do. I have just noticed what we're lacking, based on like my own trauma, my grief, and the road in which I traveled, to get to a place of healing. And with I had a podcast that I ran for about 6 years, where I did stories like this too, and I had like hundreds of people that I talked to, and it was all kind of like a similar thing. There was like maybe 1 in 20 where somebody, had a mentor that taught them meditation and how to get in touch with themselves when they were younger. But most of the people I was talking to, like, you know there was no preparation for it. There was no elder or teacher that like was helping them learn how to like understand themselves. And it wasn't until they had the trauma that they were then thrust into this world to try to figure out how to heal themselves. So I don't know how. I'm not saying that I have the answers of like, this is what I would do and this is what we all should do. I just noticed that I noticed the thing that's lacking. I I'm not bold enough to say like what it is that we should do, but I know that like going on the way that we have been going on hasn't been working, and it's reflected in how we treat each other and how we treat ourselves.
Yeah, Thomas, I don't think anybody's got the answer at the minute, but I suppose these are just the questions that we need to start asking ourselves, really, and
Totally.
start kind of looking at. I don't know if you've seen what they proposed to do in Australia, where they're kind of banning children under a certain age having social media. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
like the parliament there are passing or already passed a bill, I think, to stop kids. I think it's under um, I want to say 13, I'm not sure, 13 and under, but they're putting pressure on kind of Facebook and all the platforms to say if you don't do it, there'll be massive fines. Um, Obviously, how do you implement that? How do you maintain it? I don't know, but that's what they're trying to do. Well, and again, I'm
yeah,
not saying whether that's right or wrong, but they're trying something, I suppose.
yeah. You'd like that to be like the responsibility of the parents, but most laws are created by the lowest common denominator.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
so I understand. If I don't have kids, I worked with kids for 16 years and that was all the birth control that I needed. um and I just also, through my journey of self-awareness, I understand that I'm a very selfish person, and there's a lot of things creatively that I like to like dedicate a lot of time to, and it just wouldn't be fair to create life and then, if have resentment because I can't do the things that I'd like to do. So I just don't have any child, and like I try to be a mentor to the people that I do come across in work that I have and work that I'm a part of, and people that I meet through family and stuff like that. So um and I'm totally fine with that. If I was a parent, I probably would have I'd probably be a tyrant, especially when it came to social media. Like I knowing the things that I know now about initiation, like my child would be like, my dad is a crazy person who's teaching me these meditation techniques, who's forcing me to get in touch with my emotions, who gives me these weird trials to like practice with. And until I can prove otherwise, I'm not allowed to have a smartphone or have access to social media. Like I would totally be that parent.
But I mean, to be fair, I've got a daughter. She's 8 now, and she doesn't have any social media, and I won't be letting her have social media until she's kind of 15. I imagine that's kind of the age that is probably a bit more suitable. But
Yeah,
even then,
it's like,
it's a difficult one anyway because no doubt some of her friends will have it before then,
yeah,
and then
and
she'll want
that's
to be on it because they are on there, and it becomes a whole difficult thing to manage then.
that's the big thing too, is like I can under even if I don't agree with it, I can understand why institution would be like, nah, we're just cutting it down, because it goes down to like the lowest common denominator. And then like you are going to be you have to play the role of like the villain parent, because you're not letting your child participate, in something that our peers are doing, and that becomes like its own struggle. So it's like having to like explain that in a way that they understand, that they're at the age that they're at each year that they get older and older, where like I'm okay with being the bad guy. I'm like, I'm like, I'll explain it to you and you're not going to like it, because it is your role as you get older to defy the rule that I create for you. um but that's part of like what I'm trying to prepare you for. So like, yeah, that's going to be a nice fun, um, you know, trial for you and for your daughter as she gets older. I commend you, man.
Oh man, I'm not looking forward to the teenage years as it is. I think that's going to be a time of dread for me.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, you got to like remember what you were as a teenager too, and you're trying to protect them. I have a lot of friends that have like, now they have like teenage children, and that they tell me their journey and the stresses and stuff like that. So it's part of it. Like it's part of their trial, it's part of your trial. And that's why I think it's like important if you start looking at some of the things that you get into. If society isn't going to create the trials and the initiations for us, I think it's at least at this point a good idea for us to start preparing our minds, and let when I come across this thing that affected me emotionally or physically in a negative manner, to first of all allow yourself to feel what is natural to you in this, whether it's sadness, rage, disappointment, fear, anxiety. Allow yourself to feel those so that you don't suppress them. But at that point, you also have to like recognize like this is a trial. What am I supposed to learn here? What is my lesson that I'm supposed to learn here? Even if it was something that was obviously and blatantly done to me. Like I don't want to be a victim, but I was a victim of this situation. But how can I be a student of this situation? How can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? How can I evolve from it? How can I transcend from it? You know? And I think that's an important place to get to. um, and in the a journey of self-discovery, I think will help you be able to like understand yourself enough, know your blind spots, know where you need to like reinforce um, some of your character qualities, and get to the point where after you've felt it, become a student of it, and really like force yourself to grow. Because if there aren't any institutions around there that are going to like teach you that, it's upon you to like teach yourself.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever heard of non-duality. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Alan Watts, and like
Cool. I've not heard of
even though
Alan
I like,
Watts.
he's a philosopher, Eastern philosopher. Like a lot of people that were into what's his name, he wrote the book The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle.
Okay.
He was like a big guy, like in the early, like mid 2010, something like that, maybe a little bit earlier. I much more prefer Alan Watts. Alan Watts is an Englishman that uh lived in Sausalito. I think like that's where his life ended, in Sausalito, California. He was a big studied Eastern philosophy. Super super funny, super like really colorful like personality, silly. So like the way that he taught like things about non-duality and duality and Eastern philosophies is much more enjoyable and digestible than Eckhart Tolle. I feel like Eckhart Tolle has meditated himself out of a pulse, where Alan Watts is super cheeky. He's funny as hell, and he's just got a lot of personality. But I look at like this is a reality of duality. But the thing that Alan Watts talks about is that you know every equal opposite implies the other exists, so you need it as a whole. Like sorrow implies happiness, happiness implies sorrow, night implies day, day implies night, love implies hate, hate implies love. So it's like they look like they're opposites, and they are, but you need them to tell the whole story. And this duality becomes a non-duality because it's a system that needs the other in order to exist. How do you know what love is unless you've hated something? How do you know what hate is unless you've loved something? You can't, you don't have a story for one if you haven't heard the story or felt the story of the other. Is that where you were going with that?
Not quite. And so my understanding, I listen to a chap called Muji a lot. Um, I just find him quite soothing, and the way how he talks about it, and it's about looking at life as the point that we do have sorrow, happiness, we have these emotions and stuff, but where people get lost is they think that they are those emotions, and they get
Totally.
right into it. Whereas, from my perspective and the way I was kind of taught and I learned that really helped me was non-duality is you are the vessel. So like these emotions and these thoughts and feelings and stuff that you get, they just pass through. Where you can be aware of them, you know that they're there, but that's not who you are, and you don't have to act on them. You just have to be aware of them, feel them, you know, take take something from them. You can take stuff from these things all the time, but they don't have to have ultimate power over you, because you can kind of be detached and step back and be like, right, that's the emotion I'm feeling now. That's passing through me. It's not me, if you know what I mean. Probably didn't explain
Yeah.
that very well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And no, no, you totally did. You totally did. I totally, yeah, I'm feeling you. I mean, but like the main word that you used was awareness. You to become aware of these emotions, you know what I mean? And to be able to see them, and like, and that's like important. When you started to feel that, it's important for you to feel it. I'm gonna feel it because I need to it's part of the processing like system. But as I'm feeling it, become aware of what they are and know that like I don't have to take ownership of that, you know, but it's good to feel it so it can pass through you. If you suppress it, it gets stuck, and then 20 years from
Yeah,
now it turns into cancer.
that's the problem. If that like big negative emotion comes through you, and you try to suppress it, you try to deal with it, you try to think, I've got to get rid of this. Actually, you can just be. Sometimes, you can
Mhm.
just be, and that emotion, it might not completely go away for a while. It might, but it'll ease when it's not as fresh. It'll ease, and then you can kind of pick yourself up and go, right, what's this trying to teach me? What can I do?
Yeah.
But
And
sometimes you
like,
just gotta be.
yeah, sometimes you got to sit with it for a little while. Not all clouds float the same pace, you know, some stir, some linger, but like you got to let you know what I mean? Like you don't want to like become attached to it and be like, you know, I am angry. No, I'm feeling anger. You know, um, I am not anger. I feel anger. I feel the rage. I feel the love. That isn't me. That isn't all that I am. So yeah, yeah, no, I totally, I'm down with that. That's to me, that's like part of like the a good self awareness practice is in understanding emotions and allowing things to like come and go, and let them go. I usually visualize everything like that as clouds, whether it's like just like a thought, like if I'm trying to like meditate and I'm just trying to calm and I look at, you know, a lot of times if I'm getting near the end of the week and it's time to go to the grocery store, the thing that comes up the most is my grocery list. And I like, and it's so distracting, but like I'm just like, or like the to-do list that I have at work or the to-do list that I have here, it's some kind of like list, and I just have to allow those thoughts to become clouds and just keep on floating by.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. Actually, it's a good way to think about it. I like that. What we haven't done, Thomas, because I said I was going to at the start, and then we kind of went off on a bit of a tangent, didn't we, down a rabbit hole. I want to get back to kind of your brother and the fact that he's triggered this massive bike ride, and kind of what you
Hmm.
learned along that journey from obviously the massive trauma and loss to what you learned on that journey, speaking to people and traveling around on your bike.
I think like when I first lost my brother to suicide, like I would say like the one thing that did kill him was he was buying into uh, uh, toxic masculinity, the idea from toxic masculinity of what it is to be a man. And as soon as that was like removed from him, he freaked out. He didn't know how to handle it once the illusion was gone. And I would say that that's what contributed to his emotional downfall. He was a womanizer. You know, he was hurt by a woman when he was like in his early 20s. And he was like, I'm never going to be hurt by a woman again. So he like just became a womanizer. He had two primary girlfriends and then other conquests on the side, and the two women that he was with for like almost a decade, they like just were like, we're done. Nope, not doing this anymore. And he freaked out once like that illusion of control was like ripped away from him. For me, I had like a weird relationship with my brother. It was up and down, and um it was tumultuous for a while up until like the last 4 months of his life, where we started to reconnect for me, as much as like it hurt, I was never mad at him for doing it. Like there was like just this knowing that he was in pain, and that like maybe he didn't want to end his life, but he just wanted to end the pain. I was really more concerned about my parents after my brother was gone, because it really did a number on them. That was their firstborn child. And I did not have the tools to manage my own mental health at this point. Like, I hadn't been in therapy yet. I was a very emotional person, and I didn't mind expressing my feelings and how I felt. Like, I was totally fine with crying, and I had friends that were cool with it. But your friends shouldn't be your therapists. And I don't know why I wasn't in therapy. And so, but I wanted to do the best I could to like just keep the family together, for my parents. And we would talk about like what my brother went through. We never like ignored things or put things under, swept them under the rug. But I still wasn't managing like my trauma because I was focused on them. And I had some. My biggest cross to bear, before, even before my brother died, was that I was extremely codependent, and I would latch on to these negative relationships that were very toxic for me. Um, and as I was going through life, I at least, a few years after my brother died, I at least started to make steps for myself, for my professional career, and was trying to get into like film and video production and all of that. But I was still, and I had separated from some friends, but I was still in a very toxic relationship with a woman, um, and I still hadn't let go of that. And it wasn't until I went into therapy, probably like 7 years after my brother died, 2008, and I was in therapy for a few years, and that was really where I first, um, started to learn about self awareness and self awareness, and the journey of self discovery was with my therapist Kim. And if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have ever gone on the bike ride. Like, I needed that 2 years to really learn about myself and what I was capable and what I deserved. And it wasn't until like the summer of 2010, that the idea of the bike ride was finally came into being. And even after that, it took like another 7 months before me and Zach decided that we would do it. And then another 13, 12 and a half, 13 months of preparing for it, building a community in Phoenix, and connecting with the cycling community in Phoenix, connecting with the mental health community in Phoenix, and loss and suicide loss survivors in Phoenix, and like building that small community of support, and then having to like cold contact people all across the country, over 100 different cities that we traveled through, and had like events that were as intimate as like a room full of like 9 people, to an auxiliary gym filled with 1,000 people. So um it was everything in between. And I think the things that I learned the most while I was on the bike ride was from like very, um these just moments of awareness that I had. I remember being in Pensacola, Florida, and laying on a paddleboard and seeing my life like as in a film strip of all these. I was laying on this paddleboard with Zach and the host in Pensacola, and it was just like this, the most vibrant, surreal feeling of peace I've ever had in my entire life just came over me. Like, it was one of the most beautiful feelings I'd ever had in my entire life. And I had to recognize that, I had to go through a lot of things in order to get to that moment of peace. And just recognizing that, good things come from bad situations, and bad things come from good situations, and that it's our ego that needs to call it good or bad in order for us to process it, you know but in the end, it's just an experience. and it's an experience that we have to choose how we're going to learn from it. Am I going to be a victim and woe is me because of this situation that happened to me? Um, or once I'm through the thickest of the wilderness and feeling the emotions, am I going to become a student of the experience and grow and learn and transform? And that was like probably one of the biggest lessons that I had on that journey. Um, and then probably like another thing that hit me was when we were at the end of the bike tour. We ended at this art retreat center called the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. The artist who runs it, his name is Alex Gray. He's a known as a visionary artist, transformational artist. It's kind of like it's a genre of art that is art inspired by psychedelic experience. And so all of his paintings are vibrant and colorful. He's done like the last three or four Tool album covers, and that's how I discovered him. And I just remember being we spoke at they have a full moon ceremony once a month, and we were invited to speak and share our story because we arrived like 2 days before the full moon. And I just noticed like he's kind of like his own kind of like celebrity, right? And I just know, and our cultures kind of have like an obsession with celebrity, and a bad obsession with celebrity. And I just noticed how, people fawned over him and like would trip over themselves just to be close to him. And it dawned on me that like for whatever reason, probably for a great lack of self-awareness, that we would rather be great to somebody else's greatness. We would rather be close to somebody else's greatness than rather to attempt to cultivate our own. And I started to see inspiration as a currency, as an energetic currency in that moment. Um, and that, besides the currency, that there's this relationship that happens between artist and audience. And besides like the financial transaction that happens to purchase or consume one's art, there's like an energetic transaction too, and that is inspiration or adoration. Um, and in this, I kind of looked at adoration as more of a negative energy field, and inspiration is more of a positive energy field. Where if you have adoration, you adore, you're kind of disempowering yourself. But if you're inspired, if you truly are inspired, it's like fuel for you. Inspiration is to do something, to do. Adoration is to worship. Inspiration is to do. So if you're inspired by something, use that fuel to go make something beautiful, even if it's only for yourself, even if it's for the audience of you. Like go create something beautiful that helps you. Um, but if you have people that truly love you and people that you truly love, I'm sure that whatever it is you create, it'll also be something that brings them joy too. Because if it brought you joy, it's probably going to bring them joy, just at the very least by witnessing how it's changed you. Um, so I think like that's like the last thing that I discovered is like the importance of self awareness, the importance of learning from every experience we have rather than just judging it, and then also understanding the power that we hold within ourselves, and that it's okay to be inspired by somebody who has made it to a certain pinnacle of status, uh, but don't give your power away to them. Be inspired what they do to go make something. Don't give them your adoration and worship them.
Yeah, that's amazing. We actually do that a lot, right? And this
Yeah,
till you said it, I didn't even really think about it, but we do that so much. We're constantly just, giving that power to other people and thinking about how amazing everybody else is, and not actually taking the inspiration away from it to try kind of do what we want to do and what's right for us.
yeah.
How do we bridge that gap?
I think you got to be aware of it. You know, Yeah, can I paint a painting like Alex Gray? Fuck no. But like whatever I create, it doesn't have to be the same medium of what I was inspired by. You know, I was always more of a visual artist. I wanted to make a documentary about the bike ride, but that was hard to do. I was always made fun of for the written word. People would make fun of my spelling. They would make fun of like my sentence structure, and I had a huge like anxiety and fear. Like writing this book was just as much as like fighting off a dragon as it was riding a mountain on my bicycle. So, you know, I was just like, okay, well, if this is going to be the written word, and more than anything, like I had to write it for myself. I wasn't writing it for adulation from other people. I wasn't writing it because like I had was under any like delusion that I was going to be like the a New York Times bestseller and that I was going to make $1 million. Anybody who gets into like literature or writing because they think it's going to make them rich, like you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I if you want to create things, create from your soul of what your soul is trying to express, from what your emotions are trying to express, what you are trying to express. Don't worry about the audience. Just create. You know what I mean? And get it out of your system and give it to the world. The world's going to define it in their own terms, in their own ways, all the time, and you don't have any control over that. But you should still like make something from the depths of you, because you need to get out. Like so, you know, I was under no. That was never an intention to like write something, you know, to change my career trajectory. Would it be cool if somebody picked up the book and was like, "Hey, this is amazing. We're going to mass publish this for you, and we're going to give you this money. We want you to write a follow up. Give us a treatment from other things like that. That would be rad. That would be cool." But that's not why I do it. That's not I. To me, creation on any level, um, is like air. It's like breathing. It's like drinking water or eating food. It's sustenance. If I don't do it, I will wither and die. So that's why I do it.
Yeah, I like that, and that is important, right? You're doing it for yourself, and anything kind of creative, artistic, you if you're doing it to please other people, then yeah, it comes back to what we talked about earlier. You're not being authentic. You're not actually
Yeah.
you're not expressing yourself and letting yourself out, like the whole purpose of what you're doing. You're just trying to please somebody else. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really important that you just look at it from that guise. And I think, especially in the modern day, come with books and stuff like that, people just think, oh, I can write a book, I can make some money on Amazon or something like that. But it's
I
not.
am proof that anybody can write a book.
Yeah, but it's good, man. It's good to get them stories out and e- express yourself, get it out,
Yeah.
put it on paper, get it for yourself, really, as much as for anything else, and you'll always have that now. That's something that you've created that you can always look to, go back to, share your story with people. um
Yeah, it's mind blowing. I mean, I'm looking at my book right now and I'm like, man, I manifested that. That's what manifesting really is. It's not about the universe happening to you. It's about like, hey, I have this idea. Do I have the will? Yes, I have the will. Do I have the patience? Yes, I have the patience. Well, then I'm just going to take one step at a time until it comes from mind to physical thing. You know what I mean? And that's what the bike ride was. I had a we it started with an idea and then it became a thing. Very real, very quick, riding through the hills of Northern California when I'm used to the flat terrain of Phoenix, Arizona.
yeah, man, how long did it take you to write it?
It took me about 11 years to write. Like it took me a
Wow.
while to find my voice. I ended up having a back injury in 2015, and the medication I was on for a while, I couldn't read or write. It was words just kind of danced around, so it was really difficult. So I started a podcast where I was talking to other people about their traumas. And I think that kind of like gave me my voice, having those conversations. Because when you write, it's very, you're in solitude. You know what I mean? And once I had started having re-engaging people again after hiding and writing, um, and I was off the medication, I went back to the book and I was like, man, this is toilet paper. and I started all over again, and it got better and better, and I finally finished it, and I was able to give it to some people and have them do notes on it, and take those notes seriously. But it took me probably about 3 or 4 years to find my voice, and I think that's like the most important thing, is like you finding your voice in how you tell your story. You know, having a great story is one thing, knowing how to tell it is another. So it took me a while.
Yeah, and like you say, podcast is a great way to do that, right? Because you get asked
Totally.
questions. Even as a host, you get asked questions. You're kind of figuring out how you're saying things, or that didn't come out right, and next time you'll tweak it a little bit, and it gets better. And over
Yeah.
time, you put the pieces together, and you get a, well, in my case, half sensible story, half.
I mean, sometimes you need to have the conversation 12 times before it makes sense in a way in your brain of how you can articulate it in simpler
Yeah, man.
terms. Because that's the whole idea, is that like you have an idea where you have a feeling and you're just looking for the words to express it, and it takes a while to find the right string of words to convey the thought that you have.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
sometimes you need to have a conversation a few times.
Yeah, man. I find myself mumbling about a lot. Um,
Same
oh, that's
here.
my Thomas. Where can people find your book?
So if you go to risephoenix.org, that's the main website that has a lot of old episodes of my podcast that I did. I still have those episodes up because I think that the stories are still relevant. But on there, there's a tab for the book. The book is called 2012: A Bicycle Odyssey. Um, yeah, please check it out. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn a little bit about yourself through the telling of my story. So,
Definitely amazing. I'll pop a link in the show notes for people and make it easier for them to kind of find it and maybe dive into
awesome.
some of those episodes as well, man.
Right on. Right on. I appreciate it. This has been fun. I thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, Thomas, thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Honestly, really appreciate it. It's been brilliant. The hour's flown by, so it's been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.